Hello, and welcome back to another Thaliondor video. In today's video, we'll be talking about classes of Thaliondor, their roles, and the different class builds to try to figure out what class might be the best for you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Fighter. Fighter is by far the most popular class of Thaliondor, both because of its active frontline role, as well as its ease to pick up and play. You don't need much outside of your weapon to play this class, and as long as you got one, or get one from the loaner pile, you can get right into the action. Fighter is the tank class of Thaliondor, being the person to push right up to the enemy line and do what fighters do best: fight. And even if you're not the best at fighting, plugging holes with a shield or keeping people back with a longer weapon is all you really need to do. Take out who you can, but your main job is to protect those who can damage better and don't let the enemy get to them. Fighter definitely has the most builds, seeing as you can use just about any weapon or any combination thereof, but we'll go over two of the most used ones. First, sword and board. The standard fighter is probably equipped with a sword and board. Because fighter shields have the most HP, you can block both range attacks and more melee attacks than any other class, allowing you to stay in the fight the longest with good old sword and board. If you have armor on you, even better. One of the hardest classes to shut down is a fully armored, max level sword and board fighter. If you want to be the real capital T tank, that's the build to strive for. Next, red fighter. Reds, as we said in our weapon set video, are fighter exclusive. Swinging a big sword around lets you keep enemies back as well as break enemy shields. The only issue with using a red weapon is that you severely lack defense, especially against ranged users. You can equip a buckler or armor to help circumvent this, but it'll only help so much. Make sure to keep your head on a swivel, stay close to some teammates, and break those shields. Reds tend to draw the most aggro out of all of the weapon, especially if you yell red a lot, like I do. So if you want to be more of a blitzkrieging tank, pulling the enemy's attention as much as you can, try playing a red fighter. Archer. Archer is the physical DPS class of Thaliondor. They tend to operate the furthest on the back line, and in most parties, tend to be the shot caller. Since archers have the widest view of the field, they can call out flanks, openings, and tactical movements for their team. They're also kitted out with the best damage dealing potential from the furthest range. You just have to be a good shot. It does take some getting used to, but shooting a bow isn't too difficult, but getting good at it is another story. If shooting a bow isn't your fancy, at Thaliondor you can use chakrams, which are our game's thrown weapon, and play a fast-moving, more scout-like role. Archer's a great class for those who don't want to get hit too often, or want to be a ninja assassin with chakrams, or want to be more of a sniper-style role, or are more tactically inclined, being able to do callouts for their team. Archer has two main builds to it, and they differ quite a bit from each other. First, bow archer. What we would consider the standard archer class, outfitted with a bow and maybe a sword or two. Since the bow and arrow kit take up a lot of real estate on your body, it's hard to wield weapons as well, unless you have a rig for it. This is the sniper or team captain role. Furthest back, identifying threats, prioritizing targets, and calling out how the team should move and taking out priority enemies. This class build tends to be the highest kill-death ratio too, since you have to get through every other enemy to get to this archer. If this sounds like your cup of tea, pick up a bow. Second, chakram archer. I like to think of this as the standard thief or rogue build in the game. You'll see these guys with two swords and armed to the teeth with chakrams. They slip in holes made by fighters and backline or find cheeky openings with their chakrams from range. Don't run these guys down like you do other types of archers, because these guys are here to scrap. Because they don't pull nearly as much aggro as fighters do, they're the best fit for sneaky types. And if that's you, try chakram archer. Wizard. Wizard is the destructive spellcaster, or magical DPS in Thaliondor. Fighting in the midline, behind the fighters, wizards throw spells to either eliminate opponents, destroy equipment, or freeze them in place. There are only two hiccups to playing wizard. One is having to be accurate while throwing things, and the other is having a rig to hold your spell balls. But once you find a rig that works for you, and get some throw practice in, it's smooth sailing from there. Wizards are absolute game changers, having the ability to disrupt the flow of a fight instantly by destroying a pivotal shield or freezing a power player. I've said it once, and I'll say it again, you can be the best fighter in the world, but once you're frozen, that's your ass. If the arcane has always been more your speed, or you like to be a menace, wizard might be the class for you. There are definitely more playstyles to wizard than meet the eye between the equipment selection and the spells to main, but we're going to go over what I feel like are the two strongest. First is a spell slinger. Don't take a weapon, main damage spells, and huck them to your heart's content. Get behind a strong tank to protect you and throw as many spells as you can. Hitting anything will turn the tide for your team, and since spells can be thrown at any range, as your team pushes, you can push with them. This build leans heavily on spellcasting, but finding interesting ways to make the spells work for you is the fun of it. Pump faking an acid spell on a shield just for a spear to be able to stab them is great, as does freezing a heavily armored fighter for everyone to gang up on. Knocking someone upside the head with a fireball never disappoints either. If you've got a good arm and can figure out what spell works for what occasion, this is the class build for you. Second, Spear Wizard. Alright, this might be the most broken build in the game. Spear as a weapon has only one hard counter, and that's shields. As a Spear Wizard, you can immediately take care of that counter by destroying the enemy's shield with an acid spell and poking them to death. This class build is definitely more weapon focused than spell focused, as the spells will just be used to facilitate your weapon. You'll probably main the acid spell and get the majority of your kills with your spear, but you have options if you need them, freezing opponents that are harder to take down, or straight up eliminating them with one of the damage dealing spells. Keep close to a tank that can protect you while you cast, then push with them and make the enemy line fold between the power of acid and your long, pokey stick. It's insanely strong. The hardest part of this build is just finding a nice spear. Cleric. Cleric is the support spellcaster or healer role in Thaliondor. Also maintaining the midline with wizards, Cleric's main job is to keep everyone on their team alive and kicking. But that's not all. Shutting down enemy pushes with crowd control abilities, shielding key players with protective magic, silencing pesky wizards, and bringing back teammates from the brink of death are also parts of the Cleric's toolkit. While healing and protection can be your only focus, it doesn't have to be the only thing you devote your attention to. The class doesn't lend itself to being a killer, but if you're a good fighter, you can get right up on the front lines and fight with the best of them. Both frontline and backline clerics are viable. If you're a team-oriented person, a pacifist, or your friend group's mom friend, Cleric might be the class for you. Like Wizard, there's a bunch of different ways to play Cleric, but I'll go over my two favorites. First, Shield Cleric. Now, you can play this with or without a weapon, depending on how many spell slots you want, it's up to you. Shields on the Cleric class have less HP than fighter shields, but since they can block almost all ranged attacks, you can sit in the mid to back line and protect your DPS players with the shield and huck spells to help your team out. The shield also helps while healing, being able to block more damage coming for your hurt players while you heal them. This is what the majority of players choose when playing the Cleric class, and there's good reason for it. This class build is very strong. If you're a Sword and Board main and looking to fill out your party a little bit more, think about going Cleric. Second, Spear Cleric. Yes, another spear build. What can I say? They are just objectively the best weapon, and when you put them on a spellcasting class, they're super busted. Especially at max level, clerics can heal through their weapon, meaning that they can heal through an 8-foot spear. Super strong. Even at base level, the cleric can keep enemies back with a long stick and create breathing room to heal their friends or buy time on the front line waiting for tanks to come back from respawn. This is definitely a more aggressive playstyle, as you should be closer to the front line to do work with your spear, but that doesn't mean you have to stop healing or buffing your friends. And don't forget about thrown spells too. Shattering an opponent then poking their leg is both hilarious and really effective. Like Spear Wizard, you need a nice spear, but besides that, it's even easier to play Spear Cleric because at the very least, you can just cast Healing Hands and stab all of the enemies. And that about does it for classes and popular builds. There are definitely a million billion different builds that you can try in the game, I just wanted to go over the mainly used ones. But I've seen plenty of people make more obtuse and unconventional builds work. Experiment and see what you like, and comment down below what your favorite class is and what build you run. Until next time, farewell!